Snipey47A here with episode 2 in my Bridge Officer ability series, this time focusing on tactical abilities. I've decided to start with something easy so I can get into the groove for this series and use this one as a test to see what I can improve on for the remaining episodes based on your feedback. Now, what was originally requested of me on the STO build subreddit was to explain the Bridge Officer powers, highlight any duty officers of note for each power, and then rank or score each power in terms of usefulness in a PvE and PvP setting. After considering some of the feedback from that thread and from some of the STO build gurus, I've decided to simply explain each power and give those who watch this a different perspective to what they may read on the tooltips and the forums. This will also help inexperienced players out considerably. My hope is that these videos will give a better understanding so that you can build your ships in a way that suits you and what you want to get out of them. Knowledge learned here, if any, in addition to other material out there, will hopefully be beneficial to you all. Now, a quick reminder before we go on, this video will refer to things like damage categories, hull resistance rating, and other ship characteristics that these Bridge Officer powers modify. These subjects were covered in episode 1 called Core Fundamentals, so I recommend checking that out first if you haven't. Firstly, I would like to give a very special thank you to Neir at Teddy255 for assisting me in demonstrating some of these abilities, but also more so for his patience because I had to reschedule this shoot a couple of times. So thank you very much, mate. So the tactical Bridge Officer powers generally enhance the offensive capabilities of your ship, either through direct weapon buffs or boosts, or by reducing your target's ability to take damage by the way of debuff to hull resist. Also, through attack patterns, you can make your ship stronger and faster, as well as countering powers from other BOFF classes apart from tactical. So, straight on to attack patterns. Attack patterns are a very important part of Bridge Officer powers. Each one does something very different, and it's important that you understand these differences. Attack Pattern Omega is a very powerful ability and therefore has the longest cooldown of 60 seconds and the highest global cooldown of 30 seconds. It can only be cast on you and not other players, and it only lasts for 15 seconds. Omega boosts your damage at the Category 2 level from 15% to 24.8% depending on the rank. It will also provide you with a standard damage resistance rating and defense rating boost, as well as a significant increase to your flight speed and turn rate. Now, as always with flight speed and turn rate increases, these increases are to your current speed on a percentage calculated of your base values. It isn't a large buff already applied to your buff speed. Basically, Omega makes all your attacks stronger, even those from other classes, beefs up your ship's durability, makes you harder to hit, and increases your maneuverability. Critically though, Omega makes you immune to holds, slows, and disables, as well as teleports, making it a key ability against science-based powers like Tractor Beam. For this reason, Omega should not be spammed in PvP gameplay. It should be used to either boost your attacks or to get you out of jams. Strategic use of Omega is the key to using it properly. Now, attack pattern Delta is probably the least understood attack pattern, but when it is used the right way, it is very powerful. Delta can be cast on yourself or a team member and is comprised of essentially two elements: a damage resist buff to yourself or the team member that you cast it on, and a damage resist debuff to the foe who attacks someone that has Delta active on them. The duration of the effect is 15 seconds, and for you or for your team member that you cast it on, that is a standard damage resist buff for that entire duration. And for any weapon-based attacks from any foe when Delta is active, they will receive a damage resist debuff for 5 seconds. Now, each subsequent attack starts that 5-second countdown again. You will note that the orange debuff flag there with the Delta symbol. Now, while TAC team will clear this debuff, the duration of the TAC team cleanse is only 5 seconds long. And you will see when we look at attack pattern beta, the attack team cleanse isn't perfect. Now, of course, ceasing fire on someone with Delta active will stop further refreshes of the debuff. The cooldown for Delta is 45 seconds with a global of only 15 seconds. This means that if you can get Delta down to global, you can theoretically have 100% uptime of the ability. Now, in PvE environments where debuffing is a core strategy, you need to ensure you are drawing threat from the NPCs so they are getting debuffed, and this benefits your attacks and from those on your team. Now in PvP, the extra resist to you is nice, but the debuff success relies on you getting attacked and then having that foe focused on by your team. Casting Delta on a team member being focused will help fortify them, and then focusing on their attacker will take advantage of the debuff on them. Further debuff from attack pattern beta will also stack on top of this. Now, attack pattern beta. Attack pattern beta only affects a foe. It has no effect on you whatsoever. So while it's active, any foe you hit, whether they are targeted or not, will receive a damage resist debuff for 5 seconds. And like Delta, continuous attacks refresh the 5-second countdown. Now, attack team is supposed to cleanse this completely, but as you can see, subsequent attacks refresh the debuff, and it takes a moment for attack team to cleanse it. This is true whether you have attack team active before beta is applied, or whether you activate it after beta is applied. There is no difference here. Beta has a 30-second cooldown and a global of 15 seconds, so technically 100% beta uptime is possible. There is only one duty officer that I know of that benefits attack patterns in any significant way, and for a Federation character, this duty officer is called Zemok Jonro, who is a con officer. Zemok will reduce attack pattern cooldowns by 15 seconds, with the exception of a cooldown on attack pattern alpha, and you can have 3 of these slotted like you can have 3 of any con officer slotted. However, it's important to know that each attack pattern activation applies the cooldown, so having 3 is rarely worth it. See here, with one Zemok attacking Omega, it takes it down to 50 seconds. Delta goes to global as per normal, but when I activate Delta, Omega gets another 15% reduction. So moving on from attack patterns to focused assault. Now, this is an ability that you cast on a foe, but your teammates get the benefit. Allies that attack a target with Focus Assault active will receive a Category 2 damage buff and accuracy benefit. Each attack grants the bonus for 3 seconds, and the bonus is continually refreshed per attack. With an uptime of 20 seconds, it is possible to get 23 seconds out of this bonus. Now, the attack team cleanse for this is only 5 seconds as normal, and it will cleanse it for those 5 seconds, but it will continually reapply once that cleanse is over. Now, if the target dies while this ability is active, the cooldown of Focus Assault will be reduced by 50%. The biggest challenge with this Bridge Officer ability is the 2-minute cooldown, and the fact that rank 1 starts at the lieutenant slot. You would have to think carefully before dropping attack patterns or weapon buffs for this ability. However, in a structured team environment, it may be useful. Cannon buffs. Cannon rapid fire is a single target attack that not only increases the amount of shots per cycle, but also gives you a great final damage multiplier, especially at rank 3 of 20%. While rapid fire is active, you will get 50% more shots per cannon per cycle. Now, this is different to a haste buff. The actual firing cycle isn't sped up. You actually pump out more shots during the standard firing uptime. The duration of the effect is 10 seconds, while the cooldown is 30 with a 15-second global cooldown. Cannon scatter volleys is the area of effect attack for cannons, attacking up to 3 random targets, including your primary target. Now, like rapid fire, you are technically shooting more shots per cycle, but it's a spray of shots rather than a focus attack. The final damage multiplier is less than rapid fire also, with rank 3 being only 10% versus 20 with rapid fire, and rank 2 only being 5% versus 10% with rapid fire. Furthermore, there is an accuracy rating penalty which gets larger the lower the rank. So rank 1 has a minus 50 accuracy penalty, rank 2 has a minus 40, and rank 3 has a minus 30. The normal, global, and normal cooldowns are the same as rapid fire. So on to beam buffs. Now, beam overload is a single player attack that received some significant changes at season 13, and I don't think some players are fully aware of what these changes are. So using rank 3 as an example, so beam overload 3, you get a large final damage multiplier of 680% or 6.8 times on your next outgoing beam attack. Now, if that beam overload attack critically hits, then you get the category 2 critical severity buff, followed by that 6.8 final damage multiplier. However, after that, and with the 10-second duration starting instantly after you activate beam overload, all your standard beam attacks receive a massive buff. Again, using beam overload 3 as an example, standard beam attacks will get 50% critical severity buff and a 50% category 2 damage buff. Beam overload has a 30-second cooldown with a 15-second global, so technically you can get the standard beam damage buff for 20 seconds out of every 30 seconds. Don't forget though, this buff isn't active with fire at will and therefore is only single target. So how much better is the standard beam attacks when using beam overload than say another beam power like surgical strikes, for example? So here's a test I did a while back at the request of a player in game. Each test goes for just over 20 minutes against a damage sink. As you can see, the standard dual anti-proton banks, damage and DPS in the beam overload table is significantly higher than the surgical strikes table. Overall crit rate is similar, and I've kept the cutting beam damage and number of attacks in there to show the duration of each test was similar. Notable, beam overload duty officers is an energy weapons officer that gives up to 35% chance at beam overload activation to ignore 35% of your shields for a short duration, and this may interest some. So the long-loved fire at will, which is still loved, I guess, but it isn't as good as it used to be. It still operates the same way, with a 4-shot beam cycle getting a 5th shot, and each shot hits 2 random targets while active, but the changes at Season 13 did rein this ability in somewhat. Like cannon scatter volleys, you get an accuracy rating penalty, which gets higher the lower the rank of fire at will you use. Rank 1 being 50 accuracy penalty, rank 2 40 accuracy penalty, and rank 3 30 accuracy penalty. The other big change though is the reduction to damage at the final damage multiplier stage. Now rank 1 will only damage at 80% of your weapons fully buffed in category 1 and category 2 damage. Rank 2 will only apply 85% of that damage, and rank 3 will only apply 90%. The cooldown for fire at will is 30 seconds. The global is 20 seconds when it's on its own, or if you have another fire at will. However, with beam overload, the fire at will global is only 15 seconds. Finally, for both cannon and beam attacks, there is an energy weapons officer that has a chance to cool down these abilities by 10 seconds, say if you're not running an Orcs to Bat or a reciprocity build. There are also energy weapon officers that have a chance to give you an increase in either critical chance or severity when firing energy weapons or torpedo weapons. So on to torpedo buffs. Like their energy weapon counterparts, torpedoes have a single target and area effect specific abilities. So let's start with torpedo spread, because this is the more interesting of the two. This ability sends volleys of torpedoes that will damage up to 5 targets at rank 3. Each rank also determines how many torpedoes are sent to each target, and this can differ by torpedo as well. But this ability does more than meets the eye. Firstly, it doesn't appear the normal accuracy and defense calcs apply here. You always seem to get hit. Secondly, the multiple stream of volleys seem to generate more proc chance rolls. For torpedo procs with higher than a standard proc percentage, this can mean more chances, much more chances to apply that proc, especially on a single target or limited set of targets. And finally, going out of range doesn't mean you won't get hit. As you can see here, even though I've moved out of range and it doesn't look like the torpedoes have hit me, I've registered damage. It really doesn't matter how far you are able to get, you will still receive damage even if the visual effect doesn't show it. High yield is a single target torpedo attack, and depending on the torpedo, it will either send a single volley of torpedoes with the number per volley increasing but the damage per projectile decreasing as the ability rank increases, or a single targetable and destructible projectile, except for the enhanced biotorp, for example, which is not destructible. Now, each rank up of the power does increase overall damage though. However, unlike torpedo spread, accuracy and defense very much apply. Even though visually the torpedo looks like it hit, a 0 damage entry in the combat log means it's a miss. So, for the most part, torpedo spread is overall better than high yield, with some exceptions. And again, the enhanced biotorp is the best example of this. There are no duty officers that can cool down torp or mine abilities quicker, but projectile weapon officers can have a chance to reduce the cooldown of the mines or torps themselves. So let's move on to mines. Although mines are considered generally useless, except to Spencer, who manages to get 15k DPS from quantum mines at an ISA, some mines do work well in PvP, such as the tractor beam mines and the Nukara web mines. Dispersal patterns modify how these mines are deployed. Dispersal pattern alpha deploys the mines in increments following your ship's course, while dispersal pattern beta will deploy the mines in the fashion of a net. Each rank up increases the number of mines deployed, and it has no impact to the mine's damage output whatsoever. Target subsystems. These abilities drain power from a specific subsystem and have a chance to knock that subsystem offline for a brief period of time. The drain can be stacked up to 10 times from 10 firing cycles to the target of your weapons. The tooltip for this ability is a bit misleading though, as it doesn't factor in your target's resistance to subsystem drain. In this example, you can see the tooltip says, at rank 3, I'll get a 7.5 drain per stack. It would be easy to assume that over 10 stacks, you would have a total of a 75 drain from your target's subsystem power. However, if you and your target have the exact same drain expertise stat, which coincidentally and completely unplanned for we did, of 110 each, the resistance to drain is double the ability to drain. So instead of 7.5, the actual drain we should see per stack is 3.75, of course rounded up to 4 in whole numbers, which is how the power subsystem displays. And that's exactly what we see. 2 stacks of 4 drain over 2 firing cycles from one weapon. Therefore 10 stacks of this will be a total of 40 drain. This ability is cleared by TAC team, and the subsystem offline can be cleared by engineering team or a gear item that has a hot restart for that subsystem. Now, in making this video, we did discover that this bridge officer ability does not work with turrets, and I'll report this bug when I'm done making this video, but it works with dual heavy cannons, single cannons, and beams perfectly. There are tactical duty officers that can give a chance to cool down these abilities faster, as well as security officers that give a small chance to knock a second subsystem offline should you be lucky enough to get one offline in the first place. So it's a percentage of a percentage, so it's a very low chance to actually have that apply. Kemocite lace weaponry. Kemocite is a handy ability, particularly to torpedo builds, as the proc chance to apply is 100%. But only 10% on energy weapons. Now, upon activation, Kemocite will apply per volley on a torp spread and can apply multiple hits with energy weapons if you are lucky to get successive procs. It applies base radiation damage at the same time as giving a debuff to standard damage resist to all damage types. Now, this can be useful in PvP since most players have a lower radiation resist than other damage types, since it's really only all damage resist consoles that buff radiation resist currently. As you can see on my build, it is far below all the other damage types. Furthermore, Tac Team is not effective to cleanse this ability, because the radiation damage and resist debuff are applied at the same time and Tac Team isn't fast enough to stop it. However, it will cleanse a residual debuff. Distributor targeting. This is a recently added ability which I think is a bit underpowered in most situations. Essentially, casting this on a target will direct a percentage of your damage to 3 random targets within 3 kilometers. This percentage is determined by the rank's power, starting at 16.8% at rank 1 and moving up to 30% at rank 3 of your damage to the primary target. Damage that is chained to other targets has a 50% shield penetration and can handle multiple damage types per second for a duration of 8 seconds. Honestly, with how fast most NPCs are destroyed, this ability really only has potentials in maps like Hive Elite. The potential in PvP is very low due to players having high resist levels, but it may be good for taking out pets. The 3 kilometer area is limiting in fast-paced PvP of today. In terms of cleanse, even though Tac Team clears it for you, if it's already been chained, it won't clear the chained targets. And finally, we have Tactical Team. As you've seen throughout this video, Tactical Team is the counter for all tactical debuffs that are cast on you by another player or NPC. You can clearly see in your flags all debuffs as they are orange. Its cleanse duration is only 5 seconds though, while the other effects of Tac Team have a 10-second duration. Tac Team has a 30-second cooldown and a 15-second global cooldown. Furthermore, Tac Team also rapidly balances your shields, but only when they are receiving damage, and they will do this for the entire 10-second duration. It also gives a small buff to the skill tree, energy, and projectile weapon stats, and it's at this point that differentiates the 3 ranks, and this point only. The buff to the skill tree stat isn't enough to justify using rank 2 or 3, in my opinion. There are con officers that can reduce the cooldown for Tac Team by up to 8 seconds, and it also adds a small increase to your weapon specialization skill tree stat. Thanks for watching this episode. The next episode will be on the pilot bridge officer ability, so stay tuned, and I'll see you again soon.